On this edition of the program, DOGE, talking a lot of DOGE, talking DOGE with Jen Briney. We're talking our final thoughts on the hearings and the Dems in disarray. We are talking about Republican infighting in Florida with Karol Markowicz. A little bit of Trump Gaza, a little bit of 60 Minutes, a little bit of Elon Musk on popularity polling. It's all coming up. Big one.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for February 7th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young here joining you from Austin, Texas. I am, at my heart, a digital populist. I have been out here on these feral roads of independent content for long enough to know that when the people ask, well, I listen. On Wednesday's episode of the program, we talked about what I thought was relevant news with the hearings, that the Democrats had failed to spike any of Donald Trump's cabinet, some of which were, pretty controversial, even on the Republican side. But I heard from you guys. You said, look, there's only one story. There's one story in politics, Justin, and that is what Elon Musk is doing to the federal government. It's a Doge eat Doge world, and if you turn a blind eye to it, then we have to wonder why. Well, before I get into my thoughts on Doge, and I've got quite a bit of them, that part of the reason why I have not talked a lot about it, although we did cover USAID on Wednesday's show in the update, is that I'm still wrapping my head around it. There's a lot of noise around Doge, and it's fairly unclear exactly what is happening beyond the clatter. I also know that the Democratic Party is in the valley right now. They lost a big election. They have no effectual power in government, at least for the next 2 years, and they've been throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall. Chuck Schumer was parading around with a Corona and a lime when it looked like we were going to hit Mexico with 25% tariffs, and now the cause of the last 72 hours has been Elon Musk and Doge. So knowing that it is in the center of a political noise machine, it always makes me a little bit, cautious. I don't want to go run in while everything is wavy. The third part is personal. I am a recurring guest on the Daily Tech News Show. I've also done a show for over a decade called Weird Things, both of which have something in common. We've talked a lot about Elon Musk. I'm fond of saying that Elon Musk is not a name, but a paragraph, because people have very, very big feelings that they want to tell you immediately. And so, and this might be my failing here, I don't necessarily want to talk about Elon Musk all that much. I think that while he is a fascinating person that obviously has a important role to play in our modern society and has put himself at the center of politics and technology, I don't think that I need to jump up and down for every time that he posts on his own message board. That being said, Doge is something that is incredibly important to talk about right now, because Doge is novel. My top line about Doge is that they are doing something that every Republican candidate in my lifetime has promised, and it may very well be illegal. Now, we don't know whether or not they are actually cutting the budget in the way that they are saying. And we don't actually know whether or not anything that is being done is in any way illegal. But the fact that both are happening at the same time are enough for us to take a little bit of a deep dive. And so, let's understand where DOGE came from. Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency was conceived as part of President Donald Trump's second-term agenda, arising around Trump's 2024 campaign when Musk proposed creating the special department to streamline government operations. It was made official on the first day of the Trump administration, January 20th, 2025. It is not a cabinet department in the traditional sense. Rather, it's a temporary organization under the umbrella of the U.S. Digital Service, which has been renamed the U.S. DOGE Service. But even since then, it has now been slated under the Chief of Staff. The rumor, or likely explanation, is because they will have to be less transparent in that situation. The goal of DOGE is to modernize federal technology and software to maximize government efficiency and productivity. And to achieve that, Elon Musk says that they would like to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget, although he's said that, if you say you're going to cut $2 trillion, you may cut $1 trillion. At least that's something that they would like to do. DOGE operates from the Eisenhower Executive Building next to the White House, where it has a small headquarters of about 20 people. Rather than a traditional hierarchy, DOGE functions as a task force or special service embedded across the federal government, with small teams of DOGE operatives being placed inside government agencies to audit systems and pursue efficiency measures from within. Elon Musk is the figurehead and driving force of DOGE, but he is only a special government employee, a temporary advisory status that grants him broad access while bypassing disclosure requirements of full-time officials, something that might be a little awkward considering he is digging through so much data and does so much business in China, something that was so controversial as a combination that a bipartisan group of lawmakers banned TikTok last year. Here are some names that you may or may not know with DOGE. Steve Davis is a longtime Musk confidant and CEO of the Boring Company. He is allegedly heading the day-to-day of DOGE operations. And then, of course, there is the famous cast of DOGE kids. Brian Beldy and Amanda Scales among them. These are kids that, well, they're adults. They're young adults. They are between the ages of like 19 and 24. They come from good colleges usually, and they have either worked for Elon Musk companies or they have come out of the Peter Thiel machine. One of these DOGE kids has already flown too close to the sun, having his wings of wax melt from the rays of his old racist screeds online. Marco Ellis resigned. This is breaking as I am recording this, according to the Wall Street Journal, because he was asked about an account in which he posted, "You cannot pay me to marry outside of my ethnicity," and normalize Indian hate in September of 2024. Not too long ago. He also advocated for a eugenic immigration policy in the weeks leading up to President Trump's inauguration. But not all are so controversial. One of them, Luke Ferrador, was last in the news because he used AI to decode old Roman scrolls. It was a challenge that was thrown out to the entire world, and he figured out how to do it. A lot less people were mad at him for that. In the first 80 hours of their operation, Elon Musk tweeted out that DOGE had canceled $420 million worth of federal contracts. Get it? 420. Ha ha ha. Here's the reason why many weren't laughing, is because DOGE can't technically be canceling anything. They are an advisory committee that has no leeway within the federal government to cancel a single red cent of federal spending. That is something that is appointed by Congress and then administered by the departments that Congress has given the money to. Which brings us into one of the big gray areas. Is DOGE canceling anything, or are they recommending to these departments that they should cancel them, and because of the speed of the Trump administration, it's happening far faster than it ever has in the history of federal government? And it didn't take long for the methods by which DOGE was using to try to get a sense of where things were being spent to ruffle feathers, and that's putting it mildly. On Inauguration Day, Musk's advance team assumed control of the Office of Personnel Management headquarters in Washington. They installed sofa beds on the 5th floor, literally making camp in the director's office to work around the clock. Within days, aides to Musk cut off OPM's career staff from critical internal systems and locked employees out of databases containing personal data for millions of federal workers. This effectively gave Musk's hand-picked team exclusive control over federal HR records. One public policy expert noted that it makes it much harder for anyone outside of Musk's inner circle at OPM to know what's going on. 2 OPM employees were so alarmed that they filed a lawsuit in late January alleging DOGE had unlawfully installed a private server on OPM's network and sought an injunction to remove it. And that was small potatoes compared to what came next, which was DOGE turning its attention to the U.S. Treasury Department's payment system. This is how you get paid if you are doing business with the federal government. So if you want to see a fire hose of money and you want to know where the money from the U.S. government is going, this is the faucet. In late January, David Liberick, a top career Treasury official overseeing payments, refused to grant DOGE access to a system that disperses $5 trillion annually, handling everything from Social Security checks to federal salaries. According to reports, Liberick was forced out of his job after this clash. By January 31st, Trump's new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, sided with Musk's team and approved DOGE access to the payment network that very day. Musk's operatives quickly embedded themselves, with one DOGE agent initially given read-only access to monitor transactions, but another tech aide managed to obtain unrestricted access and started making extensive changes to the payment system's codebase with minimal supervision. This has raised red flags in Congress, including Senator Ron Wyden, who says the situation reeks of a cover-up. And yes, none of this is normal. As we said before, the novelty is real. The speed is unquestioned. Elon Musk remains more controversial than ever, and he is using the former Twitter, now X, to promote each and every incremental step that DOGE is taking. Indeed, as I am recording this right now, the DOGE account has tweeted the following. Today, 78 contracts were terminated for convenience across DEI, non-performing media and consulting categories, including one for groundwater exploration and assessment in the Islamic Republic of Mauritania. Approximately $110 million in savings. This, of course, has delighted those on the right, or even in the middle, that believe that the federal government is far too bloated and does need to be shed down. The move fast and break things approach from the DOGE operation is something that is welcomed by many who think that there is a totally entrenched federal power structure that will never go away and will bleed the country dry unless somebody steps in and does something. And so far, the DOGE operation has hit many of these organizations: the General Service Administration, Health and Human Services, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, the FAA, but most notably this week, the U.S. Agency for International Development. This is an organization that ostensibly gives aid out to the rest of the world. It is most known for being the place that will give federal money to the poorest and most indigent, and also is the place where a lot of silly projects or radical left-wing projects wind up getting funded. And that's before we get to reports that it may or may not be a CIA front oftentimes, so they can move money from one place to another in a place that they would not legally be able to do it as the CIA, which is again where we get into some troubling verbiage. Because even if there is bipartisan criticism for USAID, and there is, even if you believe that it needs to be reformed, and many, many, many people do, on February 3rd, when Musk tweets out, "We're shutting it down," referring to USAID, you have a few questions like, huh? What? And you don't have the authority to do that, do you? Which again gets us back to our central question. Is Elon Musk shutting this down, or is Elon Musk telling Marco Rubio, who is the head of the State Department, that technically oversees USAID, although USAID has operated independently from the State Department, that now the USAID is shedding a lot of its workforce and being folded back into state? Is that Elon Musk's doing, or is that Marco Rubio's doing? And while everything is going so fast, it's hard to tell the difference. The one big distinction is, if it's Elon Musk, it's illegal. If it's Marco Rubio, it's quick, but it is the government working in a way that it has an authority to do so. There is no doubt that DOGE's actions since they got the green light have been unprecedented in speed and aggression. And you can be excused if you have a lot of questions about it, including whether or not it has the legal authority to do it, whether or not there is any accountability or oversight, considering the fact that they reshaped what the organization is to avoid FOIA requests, whether or not there are conflict of interest, as I mentioned earlier with Elon Musk and China. And all of that comes before whether or not these cuts are wise. Yes, there is a lot of dumb stuff that USAID funds, but amongst it, they do actually give money to causes that the majority of Americans would want. They are uncontroversial. And in some cases internationally, they are a matter of life and death. Not all, but some. One thing is for sure. On social media, the DOGE experience has created a fervor about government spending. And some are taking things beyond the pale, using tools that are outside of DOGE's control to point out things and people that they don't like that might have gotten paid by the federal government. Some of which I think is legitimate. Bill Kristol, somebody that has been a fixture in Washington and has become a scion of the Never Trump movement. It was pointed out that through 3 different organizations, his foundation gets paid through USAID. Now, to Bill Kristol, he's like, well, that's just how things work in Washington. But to others, they might wonder why that's the case. And then there's this. You might have heard that the United States government gave $8.2 million last year to Politico, the outlet that covers Washington. Politico is a left-leaning outlet. As somebody who reads everything, I don't think that it's controversial to say that from an editorial perspective, I don't blame the writers, I don't blame the reporters, but I do think from an editorial perspective, they are guilty of the Republicans pounce phenomenon, meaning that when Republicans do something wrong, they are all in on covering it. When Democrats do something wrong, the story is about how Republicans are pointing out that they did something wrong. That being said, the connection that was made was that 8.2 million from a Democratic administration to Politico, that explains the bias. Not so fast, my friend. The 8.2 million that was paid to Politico was for a service called Politico Pro. This is not the same as their free product. It is not the same as their newsletter. It is built for the trade of government, which is to say it's more of a legitimate expense than if they were just cutting a check to Axel Springer, the publisher of Politico, to say, hey, make sure the coverage comes in good, okay? Where I do think that there is an interesting point to be made is that Politico Pro, I've spent all day today talking to people about that product. And what I've heard pretty universally is that within the trade of government, Politico Pro is thought to be a pretty crap product. The best use case for a lot of these competing products for which Bloomberg government, LegStorm, and others is not the policy reporting or even really the vote tracking, which you can pretty much find on publicly available channels anyway. It's the networking. For example, a source I have on the Hill told me about these services and is, by way of explaining them, said that, look, they're used by two different groups, the government and lobbyists. If a lobbyist wants to talk to somebody that could help write legislation, they're going to go to a service like this, which meticulously catalogs the staff of everybody on the Hill and gives you not only their contact information, but a few things about them. The source went as follows. This is how lobbyists find me to meet with me on issues that I cover. There's a 99% success rate with lobbyists contacting me for the policy issues because they use this service. And they also have little edges like this. It will say on there that, for example, this person went to the University of Oklahoma. They can slip in a reference to Oklahoma and the person can bring up that they went to OU. Wow, the lobbyist might say. It's not stalking from Facebook. It's because they have a Politico Pro subscription and they have a profile on me saying that he went to that college without ever speaking to anybody. So, case closed, right? Now we understand why $8.2 million of your taxpayer money was spent on Politico Pro. Not so fast, my friend. While I don't believe that this was a subsidy to Politico to shape coverage that they write on their free editorial side, I do think that there's probably a conversation as to why Politico Pro was subscribed on the same level that some of these other programs were, because nobody I talked to thought that it was particularly good. Bloomberg government, from everybody that I talked to on this, is a better product. So is this just the $8.2 million worth of federal money that does like Politico Pro? Was there some kind of order that maybe the federal government likes Politico Pro more than they like Bloomberg and that you should subscribe to that? Or are some of these agencies subscribing to multiple versions of these services? Services that almost universally run in the 5 figures annually. If any of those things are true, I do think that that's something that is ripe for a crackdown. Because, again, nobody I talked to suggested that you would need more than one networking outlet. So how is this going to end? Well, I do think that at a certain point, DOGE is going to hit a wall. They're going to get ensnared in some kind of legal or departmental regulation that is going to slow the speed that they are moving right now. And they better hope that they have done enough in the eyes of the public that there is sentiment that they should keep going. Otherwise, this entire operation is going to grind to a halt. And there's a sign that they might be losing public esteem. Well, not everybody, just the man up top, Elon Musk. A November 2024 Economist YouGov poll showed that 47% of Republicans wanted Musk to have a lot of influence in the government. That number has now dropped to 26%, with 43% now preferring that Elon have a little influence in the government. Overall, just 13% of all Americans want Musk to have a lot of influence, while 46% prefer that he would have none. Here to talk more with me about DOGE is our friend, Congressional Dishes, Jen Briney. I think this might be the final of our hearing aids segment, because we are coming to the end of the controversial hearings. The number one, Jennifer Briney. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into all that, I just did my whole monologue about DOGE. You have been very critical of DOGE. So what is your take on it?
So my main beef with DOGE is that it is being given the perception that it is an actual department, which I think a lot of that comes from the name. They're calling it the Department of Government Efficiency. And we know exactly why they named it that, because it's
a meme.
it's a meme. It was doggy coin back in COVID. And it's like, it's a continuation of that. And I get that. But when we're talking about federal structures, there's a hierarchy that matters. And so departments are the top level, like they have cabinet positions and they have authority over all of the agencies within them and sometimes over other departments. So it's like you look at the Department of Justice, they do have authorities over other departments. So calling this a department means something when you're talking about the federal government. And what people don't seem to understand is it is not a department. And it never was. Like, it was a renaming of an agency, a pretty low-level agency that was created in the Obama year. It was called the Digital Services Agency. Yeah. And it was created to help with like technical things like setting up healthcare.gov.
Because they botched it so bad, they had to set up an agency to fix it.
Correct. Yes. So they renamed an agency a department, but that doesn't mean that's what it actually is. But because it has this name department, I think there's just too many people in both media and in the, peasantry that think that it has the powers to do the things that it is at least saying it has the powers to do, such as cut off payments to God only knows who. I mean, one of the things that I saw is Elon announced that DOGE was cutting off payments to federal contractors. Is that happening? We don't know. But the point is, it is claiming powers that it does not have, because to even be a department, it would have to be created, funded, and authorized by Congress. None of this has happened. And so my biggest concern with it is it seems to be a power grab. And it's one that Congress in particular needs to fight. This really isn't a partisan thing for me. It's a separation of the branches and their powers, because what I'm seeing is if Elon Musk and DOGE in any way is determining where funding is going or where it's not going, they're usurping the powers of Congress. And that's our branch of the government. And so that's why, like, when I look at this as a Congress watcher, I'm like, I would like to see Congress to assert their authority here, because we don't know what DOGE is doing, but it's not what an agency is authorized to do. We'll just put it there. Yeah.
And I think part of what we're seeing here is just the confusion of something this novel happening, right? Whether or not you think it is an attack on the American government by an unelected bureaucrat, or you think it's the coolest thing ever. We don't normally see this. You don't normally see a group of 5 people just pouring through budgets and having fairly aligned interests with everybody else, because, and this might be a difference without a distinction, or it might be the biggest distinction in the world. If they're identifying things and then recommending to the department heads that they be cut, then that technically is within the rules if the departments agree to it. But then again, like, is DOGE looked at as like they are calling the shots, and whatever wasteful spending that they recommend, they better not reject it. They better not look at it a second time. These are all things that we don't know right now.
I mean, I think it is a distinction that does matter, because advisory committees happen all the time. And so that's what
they normally never go this fast. I guess that's the other thing, is that it's like, it's very rarely like, we identified this. I texted the head of the agency. We can now tweet out 5 seconds after we discovered it that it is being canceled. Like, that never happens. Like, an advisory committee does a big report, presents the report, and then, the agencies usually take their time in figuring out whether or not they're going to apply it. This version of it, I've never seen in my entire life.
Yeah. I mean, usually when I see an advisory committee, it's a way to brush off whatever the interest is. It'd be like, oh, yeah, you want this thing. Well, we're going to set up an advisory committee and we'll study it for the next 15 years. And so just wait, we're working on it. So that is different. But what's also different here is access, because there are laws that determine who is allowed to have access based on, what's classified, what isn't classified. I know at the Office of Management and Budget, we're talking about Social Security numbers and things with federal employees. Like, the Privacy Act is probably going to come into play here. So it's like, even these department heads who have, if they've been confirmed at this point, have been confirmed for like a week, they might be breaking the law here by giving these DOGE people the access that they have. So there's a lot of questions about what's legal here, not just on Elon Musk's side, but on the other side as well, by the way these agencies heads are participating and cooperating with whatever DOGE actually is. So yeah, just lots of questions. And I think there'll be lots of lawsuits that will be coming very quickly.
There will certainly. Apparently, that was why they wound up going the agency route, and they weren't like a special commission or something like that, because there were a bunch of lawsuits that were lined up to hit like the day that they were announced, and then it was a surprise that they renamed the agency that they took over, and that basically delayed or made invalid, at least for the first day, those lawsuits that were going to be filed like immediately upon their announcement. So I think they are aware that at some point they will be ensnared in the bramble of the law and the government. And I think part of it is that's why they are moving as fast as they are, because at some point they're going to get ensnared.
Well, and they're just testing to see what they can get away with. You know, do everything really, really quickly, see what you can get away with, see what enrages people, see what people don't even notice.
Yeah.
You know, one of the, I know I've been a little like crazy about it, but this whole department versus agency thing, they seem to be getting away with it. Like people seem to think it's a department.
It is called the Department of Government Efficiency Agency. That was in the executive order.
I didn't. That explains it, though.
That is. It's like, you know, on the birth certificate name. Like they are the Department of Government Efficiency Agency.
Yeah, yeah. But the people do seem to think that it's a real department, which is just so depressing that we don't know how our own government works to this level. But yeah, I've just seen.
Part of it is, I think, the reason why it has enjoyed. You know, obviously there's going to be a gigantic fight about it. Elon Musk it's so amazing that now there's not a podcast that I do in multiple genres in which I am free from talking about Elon Musk for more than 2 weeks, because I've often said on the Daily Tech News Show podcast, where I am a frequent regular guest, that Elon Musk is not a name, it's a paragraph, because everybody's got big feelings about Elon Musk and they spill out everywhere. He is right now apparently the most unpopular person in the Trump administration because the Democrats have seized on the idea that, oh no, attack Elon. Don't attack Trump. Attack Elon. Elon is the person that is unpopular, so you should attack him. And so we have all this. Anyway, my larger point is that I do think that it has found support in that, like, yes, Americans don't know the difference between a department and an agency, but also they don't know these agencies, there are these organizations that DOGE is going after the budgets for, right? Like, how many Americans knew what USAID was?
Yeah, exactly. They have no idea. And it is kind of funny watching people defend something that they've never heard of.
That is one of my favorite. Oh my God. Also, the Freaky Friday of talking points after an election where, like, Republicans were like, oh, my God, price of living, cost of living, grocery store prices. This is so disgusting. And then Democrats are like, oh, shut up, pores. The economy's great. The economy's never been better. Inflation's really not that big of a deal. And then the election happens. We Freaky Friday. And now the Democrats are like, the price of eggs.
I know.
The eggs are going up. And it's like, it's never not hilarious to me.
It's straight out of 1984. It really is.
It is.
It's wild. So.
All right. So there we go. Any other final stray DOGE thoughts? Any President Elon thoughts?
No. I still think there's going to be a breakup. I think that Elon getting this much attention is eventually going to piss off Trump just because he wants to be the main event. So I still think that's coming. But yeah, for now, I do know that we have a lot of because I know this is freaking people out. We have so many people that are in positions to challenge these things legally that are doing so. So I know that there's just a lot coming fast and furious right now. It can be really overwhelming, but I'm taking a breath and just kind of seeing where this goes, because what else can we do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'm
and
not in
also,
a panic mode here. We do have systems in place within the Justice Department that are working.
I do also think that, my end thought on this is that DOGE is novel, DOGE is loud. They are designed to make a lot of noise. Elon bought a megaphone so he could yell into it. This is part of that. We also don't know what's real. We have no idea what's real. We have a lot of tweets. We have no idea what is going to be in or out of the federal budget. I think the most that you can say is that there has been a lot of light shown on some of these agencies. And at least when it comes to USAID, good. These are things that I have read bipartisan criticism of pretty much my entire adult life.
Same.
Like, it has been the hobby horse of the libertarian set forever. It's always the place where Rand Paul will pull his underwater basket weaving in Sudan $4 million kind of stuff whenever he goes on his rants. But also ProPublica did a big thing about a decade ago about all the money that was wasted in Afghanistan, where they were spending a bunch of money for absolutely useless things that didn't go anywhere and didn't help the population. And that's before we get into how much it's been used by the State Department and the CIA for front organizations. So it's it's probably good that there is sunlight on there, and I don't know if any of this is legal. That's where I'm at right now.
Well, that's where the divisions that we're unsure about matter, right? Because there's sunlight, there's words, and there's actions. And so it's I think no one can argue that sunlight is always a good thing because that's transparency and we actually would like that to be a real thing. Then there's words saying we're doing this thing, but are you we're cutting off these federal contractors?
Who is doing it? Who
exactly.
is doing it is very important.
Doing it?
Yes.
It's very important. Or if they are doing it. So it's we really have to figure out what are actions and what are claims. And it's all so murky right now. And I guess that's why I'm not freaking out, because I think a lot of it is words. And I think actions, we're just going to have to wait and see what's actually been acted upon.
The other side of it is that right now the Democrats are in a low place as a party. They are looking desperately for a wedge issue that works for them. And Elon's famous. Elon's controversial. Elon is being very loud and novel within the government. Mm-hmm. They are making this their entire personality, down to their cringeworthy and embarrassing protest that happened a few days ago where Chuck Schumer can't even figure out what he's chanting. And Jasmine Crockett is Jasmine Crocketing. So it's they are looking for something, and that's the reason why I think this is also being ratcheted up to 11. This is not a wow. This is a unelected coup. The coup is happening.
Yeah, calling it a coup is it's an interesting play. Do they have to exaggerate everything? This is weird enough and concerning enough without going that extra step. They always do that. Just call it what it is instead of this exaggeration, because then you make people like us dismiss you when we are also concerned. It's
then Schumer and Jeffries' law to curtail it was called Stop the Steal, which Schumer was wink, wink, nudge, nudging. And it's wait, do you take anything serious? Is this a serious thing? What are we even doing here? Why are you doing this as a bumper sticker? Doesn't make
Did you
a lot
hear
of
that
sense to
the
me.
Democrats have already filed articles of impeachment?
Does it shock you?
No.
I feel like that's just going to be the new... We should make it ceremonial. When the new president is, comes into power, he swears on the Bible, and then you have the solemn that Marine Force One takes off with the outgoing president, and then we should have a solemn move of the opposition party to file their articles of impeachment against the president and just move on. Whatever. We'll figure that out.
Let's be done with it. Yeah. It was Al Green of Texas this time that did it.
Well, God bless him. And it was Charlie Rangel used to do this all the time with the draft. 'Cause I remember it was one of the first times when it really cemented into my brain as a college student that Congress is a deeply unserious place that is often designed just to freak people out for no reason. Where Charlie Rangel would file a law that would bring back the draft. And he did it to remind people that somebody could bring back the compulsory draft. And it was like, and so once a year, somebody would report it in some outlet and be like, "Did you know the draft is coming back? The draft is coming back." And this is around the Iraq time or whatever. And it was like, it's not. It's a guy who doesn't want the draft to come back that is doing a thing to scare the living daylights out of people. Congratulations, you got the daylight scared out of you. Yeah. Anyway, all right, let's talk about these hearings but while we're on the subject of Dems being in disarray, you listened to the RFK Jr. hearings and the Kash Patel hearings. Which one do you want to start with?
And Tulsi. And
Tulsi. Yes. Yeah. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's just start with Tulsi, just because I think she did the best. And I don't have a ton to say about it, but she impressed me in being the same exact person that I've always known her to be. Yeah. There was a lot of branding of her because there's been so much BS spread about Tulsi Gabbard. And so there was a lot of branding of her performance as like, she is a flip-flopper. Like, nope, she's not. She was saying the same stuff she always has, and her refusing, like the Democrats were so unhinged. And so they were just desperate to get her to say that Edward Snowden was a traitor, and she refused to do it. And she gave the same.
Well, that was bipartisan, right? Like there were Republicans and Democrats that were saying, "Oh, would you call him a traitor?" It was Michael Bennet that I think went full like mad dog foam at the mouth about her refusal to do it.
And he behaved that way in the RFK hearing too. Like he was a little.
Is everything
insane.
Okay, Michael?
Is
everything okay? It's just, I don't know, is everything okay on the home front? Like, do you need, I don't know.
Yeah.
He lives in Colorado. Smoke a little weed.
I think he wanted the sound bites because he was so over the top. So, yeah. But they really wanted her to call him a traitor. And she just kept saying, like, he exposed some constitutional violations. And so as the DNI director, I think the most important thing to do is to have a path for people that want to blow the whistle to be able to do that right up to my door. I'm going to make it possible. And so because they have these avenues, they will have no reason to disclose things the way Edward Snowden did. Like her entire focus was we need to make sure that we never have this kind of disclosure again by also making it safe for people to blow the whistle. And like that was the perfect answer. And she kept giving it over and over again. And what I was impressed by was her poise, because she just was calm and collected the entire time. And out of all three of the soon-to-be cabinet secretaries that I watched in their hearings, she was the one where I was like, okay, I trust your temperament here. Like, I want her in the room when it hits the fan. You know what I mean? So I really liked her performance.
My impression of it, and I didn't watch the entire thing, but I watched enough of it, was that you could tell why now both parties have looked at her and said, we need to put her on television more. Yeah. Like we need her to be an effective communicator. She seemed by far, I agree with your take there, that like she was very well put together. She was very calm. She did not, even Hegseth, RFK is going to RFK, and we'll get to him, but it's like they were a little bit, all right, maybe you need to shake things up. Like that's the argument. Tulsi was like, hey, look, if she didn't speak up the way that she has in the past, she probably would be in a position like this anyway. She's, well comported. She's professional. She knows her stuff. And she actually reminded me a lot of Rubio in terms of her mastery of, the topics that she was talking about. She did not seem out of her depth at all. The difference was that with Rubio, it was such a gooey love fest where they were like, oh, I remember when we hung out 10 years ago. Like, I'm so proud of you. You're my big little man right now. Yeah. And with Tulsi, half of the people were like screaming to cut her off and saying that she was a, podcast grifter.
Which I actually really, as annoyed as I was with some of the Democrats like Bennett, I do think it's good for a nominee to have to kind of go through that, because she was definitely tested. Like, if anything, these hearings, they show us these people their temperament when things get tough. And Marco Rubio wasn't tested like that, and I really don't like it because I have concerns about Marco Rubio. I would have loved to have been on that committee and been like, hey, psycho, you know all these countries that you've wanted to overthrow? Let's talk about that for 5 minutes. But he never got that challenge. Tulsi did. Yeah. And so I feel like I got to know her a little bit better. And I got to say, I'm impressed, and this is the one person where I'm like, okay, good, confirm her. I feel better with her in charge.
All right. And it does bear mentioning, as we said on Wednesday's show, that it looks like it is a glide path for everybody that we are going to be talking about, including Tulsi. Tulsi was the one that was most in trouble, at least according to the scuttlebutt, the reporting, and yes, the poly market odds. But yeah, it looks like she is good to go now that Susan Collins is backing her. All right, let's go RFK, and then we'll end on Cash. A super weird process throughout the entire time. Talk about popular people. Like, RFK Jr. is one of the most popular politicians in America right now. He has created a bizarre coalition that is not necessarily the kind of partisan push and pull that normally exists, and I think you can minimize it by saying, oh, well, it's the grown-up version of the anti-vax movement, but I don't think that it's just that. I think that that's an easy label that you can throw on it. But he's also a Kennedy. He also is an ex-addict, and he is somebody that has a lot of baggage. How did he do?
I think he did as well as he could with the opportunity he was given. Like, my frustration with that hearing, because the Republicans were all quite kind to him. So it was really when he was challenged by Democrats. And the problem was he wasn't really allowed to explain himself, because I had real questions, especially when it comes to vaccines. And the Democrat strategy seemed to be, we're going to yell at you for a while, ask a question, let you say 4 words, and then be like, I'm low on time, and then move on to the... So it's like they were smashing in as many questions as they possibly could. It felt more like grandstanding than actually asking questions. And I would have really liked had he been able to be given the rope to hang himself. Because the way that it worked, I didn't learn anything about his actual perspective. I was hearing what the Democrats think his perspective is based on quotes from, like, God only knows. And some of them I had heard the podcast they were talking to, and I felt like they were misrepresenting him. So it was like, I didn't trust the Democrats, and they didn't let him speak for himself. And so I don't feel like I learned anything. And, you know, he kept his composure pretty well. But in this one, I had actual questions about what the man thinks, because he is such a weirdo. And I'm disappointed that he didn't really get to answer those questions. So when he gets confirmed, I really don't know what that means for vaccines, except I know he's not an anti-vaxxer. Like, I saw a journalist that I sometimes respect actually put in her stories, like, get your vaccines now. And it's like, he's not trying to pull them off the shelf. So it's like, there is this label of him that I just don't think is accurate. And even in these hearings, he was like, I'm not anti-vaccine. You know, I'm concerned about the stuff that's mixed into the vaccines and the age. Like, it is a more nuanced position that he wasn't allowed to express. If there was one thing, though, that I was genuinely surprised by and learned in this hearing, it's that he is quite in favor of private insurance. You know, he was talking about how he has a Medicare Advantage plan, and at one point said most Americans would rather have private insurance. And I was like, whoa, buddy, I don't think you're reading the room. Just like how many people are buying Luigi hats. So that was concerning to me as someone who would be in charge of Medicare and Medicaid there, because there was a few times where he indicated that, you know, the private sector is better in that regard. And it was also surprising. But that's really the only thing I learned about the man in the entire very long hearing. Which is
kind of dumb, because he's probably the person that you'd want to learn the most about, because he hasn't been in government, right? Say what you will about Tulsi or Kash Patel. They have spent time in government. They have been in those halls before. They have existed inside that system. Granted, Bobby Kennedy Jr. is the son of Bobby Kennedy. He comes from a famous political family, but he's never served as an elected official in government. He's never been an appointed official in government. He has been around, but he has never been in. And you would think that these are the kind of things that you would want to know more about. My thing with this, and I've said it before, is that this was the one where I just really didn't understand where the Democrats were coming from. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to scalp and they wanted to spike somebody, the way that they do it with RFK Jr. is just say, hey, man, great opinions on abortion. We totally agree on abortion. Late-term abortion is super cool. We're totally aligned on that, RFK Jr., because that's something that he's said for his entire career, and he has only had to moderate it, since he's been trying to get into this position. If you were trying to shake off Republican votes, which is the way you kill a nomination, you don't kill a nomination by getting retweets on X. You don't kill a nomination by getting a lot of comments on Instagram. You kill a nomination by getting enough Republicans to say that they are not going to vote for this person. That would be the way to do it. Make them uncomfortable on the pro-life position, and nobody really did it.
The Democrats just show us time and time again that they are not strategic at all. Like, each one of them wanted their 5-minute soundbite. They really wanted to be the one that went viral. It was very obvious. They weren't going into this strategically. And that was also proved by how many of them were just asking the same questions over and over. So I think he's going to be
more
confirmed.
Yelling.
It was a lot of like I said, it was grandstanding. Like, they just wanted to yell at the guy and give their opinions of things he may or may not have said in the past. And so, for the 5 minutes that they each had, they were all taking most of that time for themselves instead of questioning the nominee. And I think they did us all a disservice in that lack of strategy.
Because that was the other thing, is that, like, for people that are outsiders, the way to really trip them up is to just ask them about the job.
Or the bear that he dumped in Central Park, or the brain worm. Like, there's so many questions that you can ask him and be like, hey, tell us what this is.
That? Yeah.
They didn't bother.
All right, last one. Kash Patel, once thought to be unconfirmable. There was the big question of whether or not Mike Rogers was going to be the FBI pick, because Kash Patel, who was the more MAGA-friendly option, simply could not be confirmed, because unlike RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel has said a bunch of nasty stuff about Republicans that he doesn't agree with. He's been very public, a firebrand on podcasts. But he does come from the government in the past. He has been a prosecutor for the government, so he's not unqualified in the way that, say, like Matt Gaetz would have been for AG. But he did not spare. He was very ready, unlike Tulsi and RFK, who I think wanted to take the high road with the Democrats. I think Kash Patel also wanted to go viral by fighting with them. What were your thoughts?
I mean, he's like the opposite of how I felt with Tulsi, where she was poised and definitely, like, I would want her in the room when it all hits the fan. He was the opposite. He was not poised. He definitely got angry. He got very snippy. I could see it. Like, he kept saying that we're not going to use the Justice Department to retaliate against anyone. I don't particularly trust him based on how childish this hearing felt every now and then. And I don't know his background very much, but there was a lot of questions about that too. I mean, it was the same strategy with Kash Patel that they used against RFK, where the Democrats kept saying, like, you said a thing on a podcast. And he was like, you're, twisting my words. And I've never heard him on a podcast, so I don't really know what to believe. So with this one, I walked away with more questions than answers.
Next time you're over, I'm just going to add a bunch of right-wing podcasts to your podcast player, so you can be hearing these voices more. I'm just gonna add War Room and Sean Ryan, just a smattering there. So every once in a while, when you're at a podcast, you're like, I don't know, let me hear about Steve Bannon bloviate about the deep state for an hour and a half.
Well, I mean, you're one of my not only like best friends in podcasting, but at this point, best friends. And I don't listen to your podcast, and to Andrew's always annoyance, I don't listen to his either. So it's like, I don't listen to podcasts. And it's like, so that's why I do feel a little over my skis. I'm always watching these types of hearings, where I'm used to either learning stuff or I'm not. And so it's frustrating to me to not learn stuff. The only thing, And here's what even saying this makes me uncomfortable, because the Democrats kept pushing, here's this information we have about you, that you were super supportive of January 6th and everyone that participated in that. And I don't know how much I trust the Democrats. And once again, Kash Patel wasn't really able to explain himself. So I have a lot of questions about that. I don't really know. And the Democrats kept focusing on some choir where they're just like, oh,
the Jan 6 choir?
Yeah, do you know what that was all about? Because they kept going back to it. And he was like, I had nothing to do with writing the song. Like, it was weird. What were they talking about?
So the J6 choir, I forget what song they sang, but it wound up like making a bunch of money. And Trump used to open his rallies with it. It's crap. Let's see. J6 choir. Choir song.
Yeah, he was saying that it raised a bunch of money, and that money was going towards families of people wrongly accused or something like that. But it was basically a fundraiser. And the Democrats were accusing him of somehow being involved in supporting these J6 singers or something.
So there were January 6th January 6th people, I don't know what to call them because that's even a politically charged thing. People that were being detained for crimes or suspicion of crimes for January 6th, right?
Yeah.
They were being held. And so that became a cause du jour on the right of why are these people being held for so long? Why are they being sentenced to sentences that people on the right thought were too extreme for what the crimes were, blah, 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 blah. So they sang, I don't know how they wound up getting the audio equipment to record it, but they sang the Star Spangled Banner. Donald Trump then in the middle of it is reading the Pledge of Allegiance, and that opened Trump rallies. They would play that at the beginning of every Trump rally. And so it became a big thing of like, let's get this to the top of the charts. It did. It raised a ton of money that I assume went to the families or some kind of legal defense for these people. You never really know when things like this wind up going viral. But that's what a Justice for All is what it is called.
Okay. And that was something the Democrats kept coming back to. And it sounded to me like they were accusing him of being involved in writing the song, and he just kept saying like it was a fundraising thing. I had nothing to do with writing the song. I didn't pick the people who sang it. Like, it all just seemed very petty, and the fact that they kept coming back to it.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was just like with the RFK thing. It was like, I wanted to learn a lot about this guy. Like, what would you do as FBI director? And instead it was, why'd you say this thing on a podcast?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is why you and I are kind of like, what are we learning from these? Why waste our time continuing watching all of them? Because I'm not learning anything.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from the perspective, and, I got some criticism that I've spent so much time talking about the confirmation hearings because they're like, oh, who cares, whatever. Like, you should be paying attention to Elon Musk and his weird four musketeers of, teenagers. And I do care about who gets in there. I care about it for a few reasons. Number one, these are the actual people that are leading departments, departments, actual things that are actually going to do stuff, their point of view, their perspective on stuff, even beyond what you would like, oh, are they vassals? Are they loyal to Trump? Will they do Trump's bidding no matter what? Number one, everybody serves at the pleasure of every president. They are all loyal to these people no matter what. But there's also hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions that get made on a weekly basis that are beyond what the president is looking at. These are positions that have a lot of weight, and their temperament matters. I think that we saw that with the Biden administration, where nobody got fired. Everybody was allowed to just be there and do whatever they want. And what did we get? We got a Department of Defense who was out of commission for a week and a half because he got a Brazilian butt lift and didn't tell anybody. I think that these things do matter. It also matters to me what the operational health is of the Democratic Party. And this is a sea change moment for them. They lost a big election. They are done. We're done with the Obama administration. Like, that era is now over. The next leader of the Democratic Party, the next super successful politician, almost assuredly is going to have no connection to Barack Obama meaningfully and no connection to the Clinton family. So we are at a big line in the sand moment for that party. And I want to see how they operate. I want to see who comes out of it. And I got to say, they had Hegseth, Bondi, RFK, Tulsi, and Cash. They all had different vulnerabilities. I didn't think that it took a genius to know what they were. I think it was pretty clear what their weaknesses were, and the Democrats did none of it. They whiffed on all of them, and that is something that I think is telling going forward, not only for how they're going to react, because this is an early indication of like, okay, how are you going to react when these reconciliation bills come down the pike? Like, are you going to have an effective way to try and stop it? Like the Republicans in a similar situation where they were at the bottom of the barrel wound up finding some of their mojo back when they tried to unite against Obamacare, and Obamacare wound up going through. But a lot of those arguments in the communities that sprung up around them are a lot of the seeds. The Tea Party were a lot of the seeds that eventually kind of leads to Donald Trump. These things come in fairly predictable patterns, but the parties have to be looking for these constituencies. And right now, I see the Democrats that are blind in the woods. They have no idea where they're going, and they're just bumping into each other, assuming that if they scream loud enough that somebody will clap for them.
This is a time with a particular cast of characters where being the opposition should be the easiest thing in the world. So like with RFK Jr., I mean, there are just so many layups there. We didn't even talk about him cutting off the head of some whale that washed up. We didn't talk about Caroline Kennedy saying that he was like an animal abuser and basically a psychopath.
A predator.
Like, a predator. I know. And they didn't ask any of these things. And then also just following up on like, what do you mean you like Medicare Advantage better than Medicare? That is so relevant to the HHS, but because they don't do follow-ups, because they have their staff prepare them their 5 minutes, they're just leaving all of the follow-ups. They just leave them. They don't do anything. So yes, it's informative to see how the opposition is going to operate. And if you're concerned about the Trump administration, we are not in good hands with the Democrats. That was crystal clear with these hearings. And then also, it is worth paying attention to these. So I'm not just like checking out as we go forward, but it is worth paying attention to who the cabinet secretaries are, because when you look at DOGE, if that's the thing you're writing to Justin about, DOGE is supposed to be an advisory committee telling these department heads what to do.
Yes.
So you need to make sure that these people are going to be independent and be able to tell Elon no. So it's like Tulsi Gabbard, she will tell Elon to go get effed. Like there's no way that he's going to be able to push her around. Cash Patel? I don't know. So these things are definitely important and informative. I think I've seen enough to know what we have with the Democrats, which is something I've been frustrated with for the entire 12 years I've been watching hearings. They really haven't learned how to do hearings any better. And it just seems like these cabinet secretaries are just going to sail through. Yeah.
Not great signs for the opposition. It is a pretty pathetic showing from them. Like these were not hard. Like you could expose Pete Hegseth, who has, more abs than years experience running an organization that big. You could expose him on stuff like that. You could expose Tulsi Gabbard on things that aren't just Edward Snowden. You can ask her about positions that will also be deeply concerning to some of the very intelligence plugged in members of the Republican caucus who you had to peel off. They didn't do any of it. They didn't do anything. And I do think that matters. All right. So we're probably not going to do this weekly. If one of these pops off, then I'll bring it back on. Are there any other hearings, any other people that you that you have circled, or is this pretty much the end of your dance card of the hearings that you were really interested in?
So I haven't watched it yet, and I wasn't planning to, but I might change that. The guy who's supposed to be in charge of the Office of Management and Budget, I think his name is Vought or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Russ Vought, yeah.
Yeah, but the Democrats are like making him the guy that they really want to like dig their heels in and stop. There's some kind of like protest that they're doing right now. They keep saying that he's the Project 2025 guy. I don't know. But with DOGE having gone in there already trying to access and possibly successfully the information about federal employees, including their social security numbers, their addresses, like things that I wouldn't want Elon Musk having, where they may have already given that access, I do think it would be kind of important to see who this guy is. That's the only one that I'm kind of, I don't know, is on my radar. But at this point, we're now in February and Congress is getting into actual substantive hearings. And so I'm kind of going back to that. Like I listened to one a couple of days ago about the Panama Canal. And oh my God, did I learn things. So we're getting back to, you know, experts telling us what's going on in the world. And in this particular moment where the world just seems so chaotic because of us, I think those are the hearings I'm going to be focused more on for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the most, you know, and we actually talk about this with Karol Markowicz a little bit later in the show, but Lori Chavez DeRemer is Donald Trump's labor secretary. She was the Teamsters pick for labor secretary.
Okay.
So, like, because the Teamsters played ball with Trump, that's a big deal. Now she's going to face a lot of Republican opposition. She supported the PRO Act, which was something that is like anathema to many Republicans. Are Democrats going to vote for her? That's a very interesting question. I'd be curious to see that hearing. And the other one is Jay Bhattacharya for NIH. And I would love if all of the media vultures are gone from these hearings at that point, because I would really, really, really like a substantive conversation about how he wants to handle the NIH, where he thought the NIH stymied our recovery from COVID, possibly caused COVID. Like, I want a lot of that from somebody that I think is very, very smart on that issue. And you know, everybody, it seems like, got somebody in the Trump cabinet, you know, positions where they're like, oh, that's interesting. Jay Bhattacharya is mine. I was like, I'm very curious to see his hearing, and I hope that it is just a good C-SPAN, sleepy, conversational hearing and not a big pound the table scream fest. That would be very, very good.
That's a good one. I totally forgot about him because he also, like, I know enough about him to where he might also be willing to say COVID was in 2020 and there were mistakes made by the Trump administration. Right now, there's a lot of blaming everything on Biden, but we seem to forget that 2020 happened. It's like COVID began in January 2021. No, it didn't. Lockdowns were under Biden. It was, it was Trump that ignored it to begin with. So I'm curious to see if Jay Bhattacharya would be willing to say mistakes were made in 2020. And here's what I would do differently. I would like to see, and I guess this is what bugged me about Kash Patel, is that he really wasn't willing to say anything, you know, about the Trump administration in any way that was at all negative. Like, we do have to acknowledge that that did happen. Those 4 years were real. And so it would make me trust someone more to see them do that. Tulsi did that. You know, she went back through the sins of all the administrations. And so, that's a good one. We might have to add that one to the list.
All right, there we go. Jen Briney, Congressional Dish. Where can people find you?
On Congressional Dish. And We're Not Wrong, of course.
Of course, yeah. They're both podcasts.
They are.
Jen doesn't listen to.
Yeah.
She just throws these letters into the sea and then just hopes somebody reads them at some point. But she's certainly not cracking any bottles. All right, Congressional Dish, We're Not Wrong. You can find We're Not Wrong, the two of us and Andrew Heaton each and every week. Thank you so much for doing this so often. I hope people are really grateful, because it takes a lot of time and effort to listen to these hearings and to make
so
sure
long.
God, I am at your service. I will watch. I owe you, because you did so much of this show. So any Congressional Dish work that you want from me, I am here for you.
That sounds great. Thanks.
This is your update, brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you can go if you would like to get our 2 bonus episodes each and every week. We do our best to cover everything that is going on the Thursday edition, our late edition. We covered the Donald Trump Gaza walkback. We're going to do a little bit of conversation about that with Karol Markowicz coming up in a little bit. But if you want a lot more and more up-to-date information on who is saying what, you got to get our bonus episode. We've had a great week for that this week. Thank you to everybody who has taken it upon themselves to peel off a little hard-earned coin to stay up to date on a news cycle that is moving faster than ever. I guarantee you I'm going to do my best to give you everything that you have paid for. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. It is $12 a month if you would like to pay by the month. It is $99 if you would like to pay for the entire year, or if you would like my brand new Politics Pro, available exclusively for the government and lobbyists. It's a mere $15,000 per month. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Let's get to some of the news stories that we did not have a chance to go over. 60 Minutes released a full transcript of its Kamala Harris interview amid an FCC investigation and lawsuit over editing. The program stated that transcripts and videos provided to the FCC demonstrate that their broadcast was not doctored or deceitful. The October interview, aired before Harris's loss to President Trump, drew criticism over selective editing, particularly over a Gaza war question that aired only online. The program defended its editing practices as standard journalism, citing time and clarity constraints. FCC Chair Brendan Carr confirmed receiving the materials, which CBS did not request to keep private. They actually put the full unedited feed on YouTube. You can watch it yourself. Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against CBS News, alleging election interference through news distortion. Paramount Global, CBS's parent company, is reportedly in settlement talks with Trump. This is going to happen for the same reason that a lot of these media companies are settling with Trump, because nobody wants discovery. And I'm going to say this. That's a shame. That's a damn shame. It's a shame from CBS. It is a shame from their parent company. If you are going to be in the business of journalism, you should be ready for discovery. You should be creating a culture that understands that anything you can and say could be put into a lawsuit for which it would need to be turned over to the appropriate authorities. Either you're doing this clean or you're not. And I know what happened with Fox News was embarrassing for people, and that's the reason why everybody's settling, because Fox News eventually settled after they did a little bit of discovery. So it's bad. Television news is bad. I don't like television news unless they book me. In that case, I like being on as a talking head. But otherwise, I think that it should be part of a balanced breakfast that involves not television news. And you want a reason why? It's because of things like that unedited Kamala Harris interview, which, look, to me, the most damning part about it is that she's a bad candidate. And we pointed out that she was a bad candidate in the finished product of the CBS 60 Minutes interview back in October, as well as gestures widely, everything else that happened with Kamala Harris. But what's shocking about that television process is just how fake it is. It is not a real interview. It is a simulation of an actual conversation that is being packaged and presented so it is able to be edited down to the proper time frame so it's put out on television. Did they not air a rambling-ass Gaza question? Yes, they didn't do that. They aired it online. They didn't air it as part of the main show. Did that contribute to Donald Trump winning? I don't know. Probably not. Vanishingly small. Is it a sign that Kamala Harris wasn't ready to win the presidency? Yes. Yes, it was. But television will always be able to hide behind the fact that their airtime is finite. It isn't like this show that can expand to any amount that it wants. You know, sometimes we're a 30-minute show. Sometimes we're a 2-hour show. Sometimes we're even longer. That is up to us. There's a reason why newspapers, which still does have a finite news hole, but at least it's more expansive, and podcasts or YouTube videos, which don't have any finite resources, are a better way for you to actually understand stuff. Some signs that Donald Trump's key promise on immigration might not be going the way that he wants. The Trump administration has released 461 undocumented immigrants through a catch and release program, one that they said they would be doing away with. Nonviolent detainees are often freed with monitoring devices after agreeing to attend future court hearings. Released immigrants represent 6% of the 8,000 arrests since January 21st, according to DHS spokesman Tricia McLaughlin. With detention facilities at capacity, the administration is expanding facilities in partnerships with local law enforcement, now using Guantanamo Bay for detained immigrants who are linked to crimes, and establishing deportation agreements with countries like Venezuela and El Salvador so they can push citizens of those countries back to their home. This comes after there are some signs that leaks inside Tom Homan's border czar operation might be hampering some of their ability to catch some of the worst offenders. There was a raid in Aurora, Colorado, a place that got a lot of attention before the election for its influence of Tren de Aragua, the gang. They hoped to get 30 to 50. They wound up getting 1. And they blamed leaks to the TDA organization as the reason why. Obviously, as we said before on this show, Tom Homan wants to be very public about what they are doing and who they are getting out of the country. But if that gets harder, we're going to start to run into a competency question with them. And finally, oh baby, we got a year and a half before the midterms, but we already have an ad.
Working families in Georgia have been hammered by high inflation. Now they face a new threat from Washington. If Senator Ossoff and Congress fail to renew the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, families will get hit with a big tax increase. In Georgia, the average family's taxes will increase by more than $2,500. That's the same as 8 weeks of groceries. We can't afford that. Tell Senator Ossoff to save our tax cuts.
That is from Americans for Prosperity, the Coctopus, as it is often called, slamming John Ossoff for being bad on taxes, not supporting a Donald Trump tax cut that has yet to actually hit the Senate, hasn't been written, but still, John Ossoff, bad for your wallet because he is the most endangered Democrat in the midterms. He won a very weird race back in 2020 against David Perdue. That obviously was the COVID year. Biden flipped Georgia. Raphael Warnock was also on the ticket. David Perdue got COVID in the runoff. Odd. It was odd. I was on the ground in Georgia for at least the runoff portion of that, and it was weird. A lot of things went right for Ossoff. And now the rumor is he could be running against Brian Kemp, the extraordinarily popular 2-term governor of Georgia. A Kemp versus Ossoff matchup would be one that I believe would favor Kemp. Still, we have a long time to go, so I'm not going to get too far into it. Let's wait for Tim Scott, the head of the Republicans recruiting committee for the Senate, to land his big whale in Kemp before we start rhapsodizing about that, which would be, in my mind, the heavyweight bout in the midterms for the Senate. But that's our update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you want to sign up to get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. One on Monday to start your week, one on Thursday to keep you in the know. Head on over there right now. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $12 a month or $99 for the entire year. Dude, 150 episodes of the show for less than $100. Huh. Can't beat it. And now, our friend, Karol Markowicz. Heads up before we start our conversation with Karol. Please know that we recorded this on Wednesday morning. The Trump administration has since walked back some of Trump's comments about owning Gaza and rehabilitating it or owning it or making it a casino. Here's Karol, but just know that where this was in time when we recorded it. It is our pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of the Karol Markowicz Show, the host of Normally, writer, and all-around great person, Karol Markowicz. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Justin. What an exciting time to be on with you.
I mean, we did not book this to talk about Donald Trump's musings. I mean, It wasn't a proposal. It was just kind of, as he often is wont to do, just sort of idly think about things that can happen. He often thinks about those in real estate terms.
Right.
This just happens to be the most controversial piece of land on the planet.
He's like, oh, we're just going to take it. We're going to take it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, so Donald Trump talking about America holding a stake in Gaza. And again, I don't even know how to even talk about it because in typical Trumpian fashion, it's just kind of a bunch of words that are out there.
Yeah.
But he is the first American president, and I've done, I used to think that I was a mediocre student of Middle Eastern history until the last 2 years happened where an entire generation of amateurs flowed in that made me into a PhD level scholar as just somebody who followed the news. But I think the modern version of our Middle Eastern crisis starts in the late 60s. There have been several presidents since then. Many of them have had good ideas about the Middle East. Many of them have had bad ideas about the Middle East. He is the first American president that looked at Gaza and saw a pro shop. Karol, what are your thoughts here?
So, like you say, it's very hard to gauge what's really happening. Did Trump come up with that on the spot? Was it like, we're rolling here, let's just take over Gaza? Or is this part of a larger plan? And the thing with Trump, and I have to say, I've had a long road with him. I opposed him in 2016. 2024 is my first time voting for him. So it's not like I've been a Trumper all along. But he's won me over in so many different ways this time. He's a different guy, and I like it a lot better than previous versions of him. And the thing is, I was never like one of those people who was like, oh, it was the mean tweets that I didn't like. I didn't care about the mean tweets. He was just way to my left. And he still is in a lot of ways, but he's a lot more focused on what he wants to get done. And this just being so competent in this time around in a way that I didn't see last time around, I appreciate it. So having said that, I don't know what to make of Gaza, because is it real? Is it something that he's just making a play? The tariffs happened this week where he imposed 25% tariffs or said he would on Canada and Mexico. And on our show Normally, Mary Catherine Ham and I didn't even comment on the tariffs because our conversation before was, our show tapes the day before. It could easily be over by the time it airs. And that's exactly what happened. So it's so tough with him to say he might just be applying pressure to the other countries, or he might just be envisioning Trump Plaza Gaza, could go either way.
I mean, all right, so this is and to be fair, and I don't know if there's anything deeper than this, but I don't know if I've seen everything that he said yesterday. I've seen some of the clips, so I am not fully read in on this as we are recording it on this episode on Wednesday morning. But the argument would be that there is no version of Gaza that doesn't have some kind of outside Gaza influence that plays a central part in it, right?
Yeah.
And so what that has been Iran, and what I think America would like, ideally, is that Saudi Arabia. That Saudi Arabia then pours in the money and says, okay, well, you guys rebuild Gaza. We want people that at least have some kind of financial stake in the larger Western world that are on the right side of the Sunni-Shia divide to be running Gaza.
Yeah.
Now, Saudi doesn't want to do that. I think it was Jon Stewart that says they've spent more money on Phil Mickelson than they have on Gaza.
Right.
But is this a ploy to say, hey, look, if you think that it can't get worse, imagine the U.S. moving into town, and now all of a sudden we have a lot stronger interest with Egypt. We have a lot stronger interest with Israel. Like for everybody, we're bad neighbors. Like you want our money. You do not want to live next to us.
Right.
Like, so figure it out. Maybe it's that, or maybe it's like, all of a sudden he looks up on his iPhone app and he sees what the weather is in Gaza, and he's like, nice. I don't know. Yeah, it feels like
waterfront property. It's
feels
lovely.
like Doral. Yeah. Feels like Doral.
No, it's much nicer than Doral.
Yeah.
That absolutely could be it. He's looking at it in real estate terms, and he's right. It could be this amazing place which flourishes and has resorts and has an economy, and it could be like the Dubai but with the sea, and it could be so much more. And he's absolutely right. But there's years and years
There's a long road between here and there.
Right, like, exactly.
That is a very on paper idea that ignores all of the rest of it, for which we have seen blood, death, destruction, and a fanatical war that has raged. I mean, like I said, the late 60s is kind of when America, I think, sort of comes into it in a different way than it has before. But obviously, whenever you're dealing with a question of, whenever you talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or Gaza in general, whenever the first thing you really have to ask is, okay, so when are we starting history?
Yes, you can go back 1,000 years.
When are we? When are we going to start the clock on it? Then you know that this is something that just goes beyond whether or not somebody can say like, okay, well, let's do UBI for everybody in Gaza. Like, we're beyond that.
Sure. But the thing is, can't you just picture us having this conversation in 3 years and be like, wow, that crazy mofo really did it? Like,
Well, I mean, the art.
When Canada folded this week, when Canada was like, okay, we will put more troops on the border and we will do whatever, whatever Trump wants. Yeah. I mean, that was my text to my friends. It was like, that crazy mofo really did it. He really got them to do it.
Yeah, this is, I joked about the tariff threat, that it's kind of like pulling out a loaded gun and putting it on the dinner table so your kids clean their room. Like,
but they clean it.
But they clean the room and then you put the gun back in the drawer and you're like, does that make you a great parent? No, but we're not talking about parents here. Like this is global. What he wants is a certain thing, and everyone who's like, oh, okay, well, that they had agreed to do it before, and it's like, yeah, but did they?
Right.
Did they do it? Well, now that there's a threat here, who knows? But yeah, I don't know. With this, the best argument for any idea with that region is that nothing else has worked.
Right.
Like that's the best argument for it is that it's like, okay, well, we've seen what happens when there is a self-determination between the Palestinian people. They can't really agree on much. Part of the reason why previous peace efforts have fallen apart is beyond whether or not you think the deals are fair or good or whatever. It's that there's been no Palestinian leader that's actually had control of the people. Like, Yasser Arafat never really did. Mahmoud Abbas certainly doesn't. So it's like, there's nobody that can make the deal at all. Yeah. So it's like, all right, then we saw what happened when it became an Iranian proxy. We've seen, people don't like it in the West Bank, which is largely subsidized by Israel. So it's like,
we're out of ideas. It's going to have to be a casino. Like, what are you going to do?
Maybe it's a casino. Maybe that's, and there's a very, very touching museum to the side of it of where Gaza came from. But, You can smoke indoors, and you can get a tea time.
Right. Look, we're going to respect the culture, obviously, with the smoking. So.
It's going to be a land acknowledgement.
Right.
I mean, I have no. I have no real, and this is going to come out Friday, so God knows where we're going to be by then.
Right, it could be anywhere. We've also taken over like Saudi Arabia by Friday.
I mean, I guess if we're gonna go madman theory, right, which is what the idea was with the tariffs, that it's like, okay, well, he'll actually do it, so now we have to take it seriously. then the argument would be, okay, well now if the Arab world that's the only thing that anybody wants to talk about in the Arab world, now Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia has something on his plate. And it's like, okay, well, are you going to do something or are you not? Go talk to your boy.
Right. And look, thinking about this whole thing in a more serious fashion, although there's so much humor in it. There really is. There's so many funny parts to it. It's hard not to laugh. But I don't want American troops in Gaza. I don't want them securing, if he empties Gaza according to his plan, send them all to Egypt and Jordan. All right, we'll see. But it's going to be a ground war. We're going to get mired down again in it. He's only president for 4 years. There's a lot of issues with this plan. So I hope that it's strong-arming them into doing something. And look, the Palestinian friends in the West have been enemies to them. Anybody who's encouraged the Palestinians to keep fighting the Israelis, to never back down, to keep trying to defeat Israel and get rid of all the Jews, has done nothing but cause harm to the Palestinians. So this is a different viewpoint. This is I would say, a more pro-Palestinian viewpoint, where he's like, we're going to give them better land and give them a better chance. And whether or not that's possible is a real big side question.
Yeah, again, who knows exactly what this situation, is going to turn into.
Right.
I will say on the critical side of it, Donald Trump largely differentiated himself from the field in 2016 by destroying the neoliberal or the neoconservative warmongering of the Bush administration. Like that was the big thing that you saw, is that besides the fact that he was famous and he was, he said silly things about Rosie O'Donnell and stuff like that, like the biggest policy thing was him saying the war in Iraq was stupid. We should have never gone to the war in Iraq. Nation building is stupid. Why are we spending all this money? Why are we killing American people? That was a core tenet to who he continues to be. So if he is saying, no, we're going to dispense American troops.
Like, this isn't like
this isn't a public-private partnership. This isn't, you call Eric Prince and you send, a bunch of private militants to go do whatever. If it's literally, people going from Middle America to
He's not handing money to the NGOs. He's not like, you guys deal with this. No.
So who knows? I'm glad we talked about it because it is something that is worth talking about. Who knows where it's going to be by the time that this episode even comes out. So
looking forward to that.
Oh my good God. What? Geez. And you know what the funny thing is? I think it just kind of stunned everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if even, there are few issues that are as entrenched as the Israeli-Palestinian issue, right?
Yeah.
And even then, everybody was just kind of like, wait, what? Like, what?
Right.
What's gonna...
No one saw this coming. I mean, absolutely not a single person.
I'm definitely against it. I will figure out exactly what it is, but I'm against it. Okay. So I want to talk to you about your adopted home state of Florida and what is happening there with the immigration bill. But before we do it, one of the things that me and you talked about before the election was the question of the Jewish vote for Trump. We have had obviously a few months since the election. I know that we were talking about, the kind of gains that you would see. Have you seen more firm data on that?
So I put the number. So when I was on your show, I said that Trump got 30% of the Jewish vote in 2020, which was already higher than previous Republicans who had been in the 20s. And I predicted he'd go up to 38%. And you were one of the only people who understood with me that an 8% jump is actually quite large.
That's massive, yeah.
But a lot of people were like, that's nothing, and how embarrassing that's what it would be. I actually think it was higher than that. I think it's in the low 40s, maybe even mid 40s, because I looked at all the state data. And so the national polls came out, national exit polls had absurd numbers, like 18%, like numbers that just could not make sense. But then you look at those national polls and they didn't count like California and New York. and that's like where all the Jews live. But
Aside from
and
Florida.
Florida,
Yeah,
and Florida.
and
They didn't count
Florida,
Florida
yeah.
either.
Oh, really?
No,
Okay,
they
then
left
you
out
missed all
three.
the Jews.
Right.
You missed out
right.
all the Jews.
But even if you missed out all the Jews, are you telling me that Jews in like Texas are less likely to vote Republican than Jews in New York or California or Florida? They're not. So I looked at the state by state data. A lot of people broke down neighborhood data. So in South Florida, you had a lot of these majority neighborhoods, Jewish neighborhoods, go overwhelmingly for Trump. I'm talking like 80%. So even if you kind of factor in the very large, still existing liberal Jewish cohort, I still put the number at a minimum of 43%. I don't see how he got less than that. And there's a lot of possibility that he got more. People lie to exit pollsters all the time.
Yeah.
But also, if it's your first time ever voting Republican, and I have a ton of Jewish friends who did this for the first time, and it's such a scandal in their lives, like, I voted for him. And it's like, it's something that they whisper to me over dinner. I think those people are not going to be likely to tell the exit pollsters the truth. And I think they're just going to...
But still, over 40%.
Over 40, yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
The electoral consequences of that are, it's part of the reason why he wins the popular vote, because it demonstrates that he, has moved the battle of attrition in blue states like New York and California are that much further. And it's part of the reason why you've seen the Florida become Alabama basically electorally when it's not. Like Florida's a very, very purple state, and even the region that you're in Palm Beach. But at the same time, if Democrats are going to win in Florida, they need to blow out the vote in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade. They lost Miami-Dade outright, and the Jews are in Broward and Palm Beach. Like, that's where the Jews are. So it's like...
They won Broward, but they almost lost Palm Beach. And if it wasn't for mail-in vote, which I kind of think is snowbirds who don't really live in Palm Beach, they would have lost. And the mail-in vote was the in-person vote.
Oh, really? The mail-in vote was the only reason why? Wow.
The in-person vote was overwhelmingly Republican.
I guess you don't know in Florida because they actually count their votes fast. So you don't really, it's not like Palm Beach was red for 3 days and then all of a sudden it went blue. It was
no. It was always
like
very close, but it was the mail-in vote that pushed it over.
That's crazy. And when you look at where the Democrats are, and I was listening to the most recent episode of Normally that you guys were going over with the new leadership for the Democrats. Ironically, the vice chair coming from South Florida, from Broward, David
Florida
Hogg,
boy.
another Broward County public school graduate like I am, but boy, he's got some skeletons. There was some stuff out there yesterday on Twitter that is ugly, just bad. But
really, I don't know if I saw it. I thought it was just everything he touches fails.
Well,
like the pillow
there
company.
are questions from people inside Marjorie Stoneman Douglas that he wasn't where he said he was.
Right. Yes,
during-
I've heard that before. Right. Yes, that he wasn't
and,
actually at the school. Yeah.
And that also, I mean, I don't know how much of this gets magnified and how much of this is high school stuff, but it's apparently was not particularly well liked initially. He also very quickly ran out his welcome with March for Our Lives. So the other kids that survived the shooting eventually hated him because he didn't want to show up or actually do any work. He was just kind of a fundraiser.
Yes, that we've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's look, they apparently brought him on because he was going to be a whisperer for Gen Z men. I don't know a lot of the Gen Z men that voted for Trump that would necessarily be. I think he had an interview with Gabe Fleischer where at least he was cognizant of the idea that there are really kind of two Gen Zs. There's the Gen Z that was out of high school by the time that COVID hit, and then there was the Gen Z that was in school when COVID hit, and that is two very, very different cohorts. But beyond that, I don't think he's the guy to talk to him.
No.
Let alone heal the divides of Latinos, and Jews, black voters. There are a lot of problems that they have right now, and they're just kind of flailing. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that the guy that is now the chair, and also, look, we are entering, there used to be a world where the Republican National Committee was strong, and the Democratic version was weak, and it was always dependent on the candidate. Then Trump came in, and now the Republican is weak, Although who knows, maybe Michael Whatley stays there for 30 years. And
I don't know who the vice
rebuilds
chair
it.
is of the Republican National Committee.
Who knows? Yeah,
Right.
exactly. But it did not seem promising, or at
No,
least the
no,
people
it didn't.
around
Yeah.
around the Democratic leadership. It wasn't like there was this big sobering, like, holy crap, we really took it on the chin there. Like, our coalition is crumbling. Like, we are running in the wrong direction. It was like, man, if it weren't for those racists and misogynists, we would have had it.
Almost had him. Yeah.
Almost had them. Anyway, that's enough about the Democrats. Let's talk about the Republicans, because this is a big hobby horse for you. When did you move to Florida?
3 years ago. So January of 2022.
So you were very much resettled in the age of DeSantis.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the reason to bring you down. And it was interesting as you were going through this, because the stuff that's happening now very much reminds me of when I was growing up.
I wish you had told
for which
me.
this has been an aberration, which is that the Florida legislature, really regardless of party, is pretty well bought and captured by the commercial interests in Florida.
You could have given me a heads up, Justin. I had no idea.
I didn't know you then. I didn't know you. But yeah, the three biggest things that were said, and who knows, this is me growing up that people are just talking about it, but like, the three biggest interests were the Seminole tribe, the Disney, and Big Sugar. So, and that is essentially where agriculture is kind of represented. That's the biggest agriculture lobby, is sugar. Of the three, Big Sugar is the oldest. I guess that and the Seminole tribe, but the Seminole tribe really professionalized, later. And now, through DeSantis, you saw things that you had never really seen before. Like, he stood up to Disney. Nobody ever thought anybody was going to stand up to Disney. I certainly didn't think it was going to be a Republican. I thought it'd be a Democrat, because that's usually who was complaining about how much Disney owned and was able to do whatever they wanted.
So funny.
DeSantis stands up for him, or stands up to him. Gets into a big fight, survives it, for which nobody ever thought anybody could do. And now, explain to people who are not following Florida politics, who are not on the right side of the aisle, what is happening with this immigration bill.
So I should add that I think that with Big Sugar, there's also Big Weed now. And weed has become a continually kind of growing constituency in Florida.
No pun intended.
And so this last election, DeSantis actually beat back 2 constitutional amendments that, frankly, I thought were going to pass. They were both so covered in such a way in Florida and nationally. And so one of them was going to legalize marijuana, and one of them was going to make abortion legal up until, I believe, 15 weeks. Maybe it was a little longer than that, 20 weeks. So he beat back both of those, and it was a surprising win. Donald Trump was actually for both of those amendments, and DeSantis still ended up victorious there. I would say that the relationship between Trump and DeSantis has gotten a lot better, although it's hard to say, because this whole recent battle, there is this undercurrent of, does Trump support DeSantis or does he support the legislature? So I'll tell you what it's all about.
Got you.
DeSantis is a very go do it kind of guy. And I think that when Trump was elected, he decided he's going to close a lot of the loopholes of illegal immigration in Florida. He's going to make coordination with ICE easier than it has been with the Biden administration, and just get a lot of things done very quickly. He calls a special session of the legislature, and they say, no, we're not coming in for a special session. And then Trump tweets his support of the special session, and they decide to come in, but on a different day than DeSantis wanted, because they're going to show him.
Gotcha.
They pass a bill that is extremely weak. The main thing that it does is move enforcement of illegal immigration from the governor's office to the agriculture commissioner, which, going back to your point about the 3 entities that control Florida, the agriculture commissioner is very close with Big Sugar. They've been big campaign donors to him. It has just been very, very obvious what these people in the legislature are trying to do. They're trying to make it easier to bring in illegal immigrants to do, a variety of jobs. So if you look at this bill, it could easily be considered a bill from the left. The only thing it doesn't do is, and the reason Democrats didn't vote for it in the Florida legislature, is it doesn't give in-state tuition to illegal immigrants. Other than that, it's a very soft on illegal immigration bill. And they have been going after DeSantis with insane accusations and insults. And no matter what people think about what happened with DeSantis and Trump, DeSantis remains incredibly popular in Florida. He is very much riding high in the numbers. And the thing is that had you asked me a month ago, how's the Florida legislature? I would have been like, great. They're great. What? I have no issue with them. Who knew?
Well,
who knew? Justin did not tell me.
I did not.
Yeah.
No, I kept this one from you. So the Florida legislature right now is in a Republican supermajority, which means that theoretically Ron DeSantis, if he were totally aligned with them, can do pretty much whatever he wants. And he has. I mean, that was really the big story a few years ago after his reelection, where they did he gerrymandered the state the way that he wanted. They got pretty much everything that he asked for. I forget who wrote it. It had to be something that you retweeted, because you're by far the person who's in my feed the most about this. But it was like, I would have assumed they would have at least waited for DeSantis to leave before, just revealing themselves back to be Bush Republicans.
It's bizarre. It's so weird, because they also said they called their week on immigration bill the Trump Act, thinking like that should do it. Like we called it the Trump Act. How could anybody oppose this? But they've gotten such backlash. And I'm talking normies in my life, not just the Twitterati. A lot of normal people that I know are really worried about this. Not even so much about, like, let's say you think we should be not hardcore on illegal immigration. We shouldn't be just deporting people. Let's say you believe there should be some kind of process. These people want a better life, all of this. It's the concern that this goes even beyond that this is like a soft on immigration proposal that would literally work in a blue state. It's not like it's not a Republican soft on immigration proposal. It's a blue state soft on immigration proposal. And so it's concerning to people, and they're worried about, we have DeSantis for 2 more years, like what comes after this? And Byron Donalds is in the lead right now, kind of name recognition, but is also just, polling atop the potential future governor chart. And he opposes the legislature's bill, which of course makes sense, because if he wants to be governor, why would he want the agriculture commissioner to have this kind of power? It makes no sense. So,
by the way,
this is where we are.
If we were talking about national Democrats being in disarray, the Florida Democrats are one of the worst parties, the worst state parties that happens nationally. I think a couple years ago, me and a friend of mine, Evan Scrimshaw, we did a draft. Maybe we should do this again, of just worst state parties, throughout. And so it's like, all right, the Arizona GOP, the Florida Democrats, these are just terrible. They're bad at organizing. They're horrible at picking candidates. They can't get out of their own way. They're terrible. And yet the brightest star of that crop was Nikki Fried,
who was the agriculture
secretary.
Right.
So it's like, even then, the last person that was in that role was a Democrat. It is fascinating to me that this is the fight, and it's also fascinating to me that it comes in this Trump-DeSantis feud, which I really think is probably more of a Susie Wiles-DeSantis feud, because Trump has a short memory. Trump has said awful things about people. He gave Lindsey Graham's phone number out publicly and then was golfing with him like a week later. So it's like he has a short memory. The beef between Susie Wiles and the DeSantises was apparently ugly, and she does not have a short memory. And but even then, they seem closer now. So who knows?
So, but what I would add to this is, I don't know what Susie Wiles, what the role is here, because there's just so much like innuendo. The legislators are like, we spoke to the White House and they approved this. And I would love to hear that Stephen Miller approved this soft on illegal immigration bill. I want to hear that from Stephen Miller. But the thing is that I think that a lot of this, like, we just don't like Ron DeSantis and we just want to fight him on behalf of Trump because how dare he run against Donald Trump. I think all of that is a cover for the fact that they want this soft on immigration bill. So they've turned it into like, this is just a power struggle. Like, nothing to see here. We just want to punish him for running against Donald Trump. We just want to make sure he doesn't have too much power in his last 2 years in office. And that's really what this is all about. And I call complete bullshit on that. I think that this is not at all a power struggle. This is very much an immigration question, and they're covering up their bad bill by calling it the Trump Act and by saying that, oh no, we just don't like Ron DeSantis. And I would just add that one of the people who's most, angry at Ron DeSantis, like, how dare you run against Donald Trump? And his name is Randy Fine, and he's likely going to be a congressman because of the special election in April is coming up. Trump endorsed him. He just won the primary.
Which seat is that? That's
it's Ron DeSantis' old seat. It's either 16 or 19. I'm like bad with numbers. But he actually endorsed Ron DeSantis for president against Donald Trump. And now he's like, how dare anyone run against Donald Trump? How could you have done this? And he had endorsed DeSantis before switching to Donald Trump.
And then flipped,
Right. And the reason he says he switched is because Ron DeSantis is not good on Israel. Like, sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a cover. Mm-hmm. I don't. Obviously, Donald Trump is very powerful in Florida. He's not powerful in Florida, like in terms of the state stuff, though. Like, I think he is statewide popular. I don't know if he's Tallahassee powerful in the way that DeSantis is Tallahassee powerful. It'll be curious to see whether or not Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis endorse different gubernatorial candidates.
Right.
That will be very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much Byron Donalds is going to try and cozy up. I think if he was smart, if he was smart, I think he should. I think he,
cozy up to DeSantis.
To DeSantis, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think DeSantis is going to be a kingmaker. Not that obviously Donald Trump's endorsement matters a lot. I'm not saying anything about that, but people trust Ron DeSantis to run Florida. It is a trust that they feel that this legislature has broken. Like, we elected Ron DeSantis in a landslide, and who are you people to say that he, shouldn't get the power to enforce immigration? That's crazy. Or to coordinate with ICE. Yeah.
One of the other things that is interesting is that Florida has a different relationship with immigration than almost every other state in the union. Not only because it is incredibly well trafficked by international communities. Yeah. You've got a lot of different. If you look at I would guess that there's a larger hub of like visa overstayers in Florida than there is probably on average. I would totally back of the envelope math. I would probably guess that it's like on par with New York or LA or a major hub like that, that it's punching above its weight population wise. But also because you had wet foot, dry foot for so many decades. And so you've got a bunch of Cuban immigrants that were like, we didn't file paperwork. We swam. Right. And then we touched blue, made it true. And now we get to be here forever. And so it's like, there is going to have to be a process of, especially post normalization with Cuba, post, after wet foot, dry foot has now been gone for probably over a decade and a half, I guess.
Since Obama, right?
Yeah, since Obama. Yeah. So, like, there was always going to have to be an awkward, a period with it. But at the same time, if you got a popular governor and that's what he wants, then
and
that's what he wants.
Yeah,
that's it. It's what the people want. Yeah.
Right.
So where are we now with this?
So now it looks like they're coming closer together, which to me is a giant tell that Donald Trump did not support the legislature's bill, because he could end this today, right? He could tweet out, I love the Trump Act. The Trump Act is the greatest act in the history of acts, and isn't this act so beautiful? And it would be over. It would be over for Ron DeSantis, I think, because he would have, he could veto, but then they would be able to overturn his veto. But I also think it would go immediately to the courts, because it's also unconstitutional to take these powers away from the governor. So I think Ron DeSantis wins this no matter how you look at it. And I think the fact that Donald Trump hasn't said a word about it, and again, I would love to hear what Stephen Miller has to say about this act. That would be the interview that I would want. The question to Stephen Miller, like, which part of this do you approve of? I think Ron DeSantis wins, and it's getting clearer to these, state people that they're going to have to fall in line with him. It's just, he's running the state the way he's been running it. The people want it. The people like it. They don't want the legislature to oppose him. That makes no sense to anybody. And I think they're going to learn some valuable lessons. I wonder if any of these people get primaried. Talking about memories, I just feel like voters have a very short memory, but this has inflamed people. Like it is, every single tweet about anything by any of these guys is ratioed to death, and all the comments are like, resign, we're going to primary you, you're the worst ever, I hate you. So we'll see how this ends up.
It's amazing that there's actually a story about conflict in the Florida legislature. Like, normally it's either fruitless protests or corruption stories. It's usually the only stuff that comes out of Tallahassee at all.
We're glad to amuse you guys for a little while.
Well, I mean, and also the fact that it's like, where is Republican power going to be? Let me ask you this about DeSantis. So he's done in 2 years during the midterms. Where would you like to see DeSantis go? I mean, he's still a young man.
Yeah.
You obviously believe in him
I do.
as a leader.
Yeah. But I don't know.
He calls you up and says, Karol, where am I going? Where do you say?
It's so tough because in 2 years, it's a very tough call. He is not a congressman or a senator. He just isn't. He is the guy in charge. And so I don't know where he could go unless he's running the show. So like university president or something, lobbyist of some sort. I don't know. Does he run for president again in 2028? Hard to say. I think that there were definitely some issues with his campaign in the last time around.
You think?
One or two. So I don't know. I don't know that I don't know what kind of higher office there can be for him, or different office, maybe in the Trump administration. I would say, you're a young man, go make money. That's actually what I would say to him. Go make money for now. See where life takes you.
Write books, go on TV.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Stay in the conversation, but make bank. You have a young family. That money's important, and I don't think there's anything wrong with taking this time in your life to put some savings away and see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, there is going to be, that seat, Marco Rubio's seat that he plugged in, but I don't know if he's interested in going to the Senate. That seems like
he can't even get along with the Republicans in his own state.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to go. I don't know. To be one of.
Speaking of university presidents, I think Ben Sasse might have killed the Republican politician to Florida education pipeline for a few generations.
It's tough. I really liked Ben Sasse. I don't know. I feel.
What the hell was that? Ben Sasse had a good reputation, and then he just looted the school for like 8 months, and they're like, please leave. You're bleeding us dry.
And I don't know if the news of UF has but UF has become the Ivy down here. It is the school that everybody wants their kids to go to. It's a really extremely popular, very high achieving school. So it's just a crazy situation over there.
Yeah, well, they waitlisted me, and it was my safety school, so they can die forever as far as I'm concerned.
We hate them.
Screw them.
Yeah, see,
I got into my number one. It's fine. It's no problem. No problem.
But UF is nobody's safety school anymore. It is like the first choice school for a lot of people. So where did you end up going?
Syracuse.
Okay.
For journalism.
Nice.
Better school.
Sure.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Whatever. Screw UF. I don't care. Waitlisted me. Get out of here. All right.
Their mistake.
It is their mistake. Come on. I would have been a great alumni. Karol Markowicz, where can people find everything that you do?
I'm on X at just my first name, Karol. I link it all up there. I have 2 podcasts, Normally and The Karol Markowicz Show. And I still write for the New York Post and for Fox News.
Real quick, actually, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about before we get you out of here. The cabinet. I know that you guys have talked about it on normally.
Yeah.
Some of them were people that you really, really liked. Some people were people that you were
Less.
holding your nose for a little bit. Does it surprise you that it's actually kind of gone as smoothly as it has?
Yes, it does. It surprises me very much. I did not think that Tulsi and RFK were going to make it through. I really didn't. And the thing is, I am not an RFK fan. I think he's probably my least favorite of the bunch. Actually, no, the labor secretary is my least favorite of the bunch.
She might be the one that actually, she's not going to have the public support. Oh. Well, it's because it's behind the scenes a little bit.
Right.
But the only people that were ever going to be in jeopardy were people that weren't going to get Republican support, right? So the Democrats, the liberals were going to have bigger problems than like the Hegseths or the Patels because they're true red Republican. The rock rib Republicans. That's who you're worried about to lose that support. So a labor secretary that supported the PRO Act that doesn't have the gigantic Charlie Kirk, Meghan McCain, Jack Posobiec thing that Tulsi had. I don't know. Maybe.
Tough. Yeah, it's gonna be. Well, we'll see. But I think the Democrats are all going to vote for her. So we'll see. How many Republicans cross over, and that's the problem there. But so for RFK, I am not a fan. Again, I consider him just a big lib, and I'm concerned about him in a lot of ways. But I totally thought they should confirm him, despite me not liking him, because he was on the stage with Donald Trump everywhere he went. There was no mystery that he was going to be part of the administration. People voted for that. I know Maha people who came over to the Republican side because of RFK. So even though I'm not a fan, even though I think he's, again, just a total liberal and, that's my big issue here.
What part about the word Kennedy makes you think big?
That's the thing. I'm not supporting any Kennedys, none.
Well, that's why it's I watched the clips of his hearing, and it's wow, he's kind of arrogant, and he feels like he kind of is deserved to this position, like every Kennedy has always been for time immemorage.
Yeah,
that's just
born
kind
on third
of the
base.
brand.
Think they hit a triple for sure. They're all exactly like that. But again, I thought that Republicans had a duty to confirm him because he was clearly part of the package. And I was a big Pete Hegseth fan. I think he's going to be great at defense. But I could see the argument against him where he wasn't part of the package. He was a big surprise to people. It was wow, what? That's who's going to be running the Pentagon? And I thought that was great, but I understood why people would be shocked. You can't be shocked by him picking RFK. You can't be shocked by Elon Musk being his right-hand man. We saw this on the stage for months and months and months and months. There was no surprise here about those people being in his world.
It's shocked me that the Democrats have been so inept that they haven't figured out that it's oh, do you want to kill RFK's confirmation? Then leave the dais and high-five him on abortion. Just talk about how, man, you're so right on abortion. We agree so much on abortion.
Yeah, and climate change.
I'd like to thank you for your work and bringing, the quotes they should have been reading were things that would have damaged them with the Republican vote, not the vaccine stuff.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
That's
so
just
smart. Yeah. And that's the thing with Democrats.
There.
They hate Trump so much that they can't get out of their own way. I thought in 2016, it was so obvious that Donald Trump just really wanted to be loved. And he wanted to be, embraced by these people. And he had always been a Democrat, and these were his people. And they were no, we hate you. Instead of being no, we love you, and can you work with us on this bill that we want? Because he totally would have. Kim Kardashian was able to figure it out, but Democrats weren't.
It's hey, codify Roe versus Wade, and we'll greenlight a statue.
Yes, a big, beautiful statue.
Amazing. This is great.
Yes, exactly.
All right, Karol, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Justin.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. If you want to email the show, it is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find, follow, and share clips from the show and original content that we do on the short form videos, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. Well, Justin R. Young is all those. YouTube is Politics, Politics, Politics. If you would like to support this show, hit me with a one-time little, hey, good job on that episode. It is paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash, and you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Of course, you can always get our bonus content at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, either $3 a week, that's $12 monthly is the way that it's billed, or $99 for 1 entire year, over 150 episodes for less than $100. Come on. What are we even doing? What are we even doing? That's the way to go. That's the way to go. That'll lead us right into the midterms. Come on. We're already getting ads against Jon Ossoff. We have so many ads. But it's only at our founding tier that you get your name read at the end of the show, like these fine folks in our Titanic founding tier. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam. Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York. Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, A Dog Named Truckers, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Next week on the show, God knows. Chaos. Chaos will reign. Who knows what's going on, man? We'll have good guests. It'll be a good time. Hopefully you guys like the DOGE stuff, because it was good. It was good to do. Anyway, have a good weekend, guys. It's gonna be really nice here in Austin. So that's good for me and anyone else who's in Austin. If you're cold, then get warm. I'll stop talking. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Take the Eagles in the point. Talk to you guys later. Till next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss all 3.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.